The Commander format panel, which I'm a part of, just posted a major update to the Commander bracket system with shifts in game changers like Farewell, and more importantly, an update to the ban list with 2 cards being unbanned and a bit more writing around the rest. There was a lot of chatter online for this announcement, with a lot of speculation into popular and hotly debated cards like Rhystic Study, and today I'm going to talk about some of the biggest cards on the ban list and dive deeper on why some of them haven't been banned. So, before I begin, I have one question to ask you. Please, can I have $60 from you? So if I ask you for $60, you'd expect me to have a really good reason, because especially in this economy, $60 ain't nothing. But you know what? I'll ask you again later in this video. As you probably heard, the newly freed cards from this update are Biorhythm and Lutri, which means I can retire now because we got the job done. The Slippy boy is liberated. Freedom! But the real discourse isn't so much around these cards, which one is clearly celebrated and the other is kind of like, alright, green gets a new toy, whatever. And it's part of a wave of sensical unbans like Coalition Victory, Worldfire, and Sway the Stars. And more of that came from the changing stewardship from the Rules Committee to WotC, or Wizards of the Coast. And the thing I'll add to this is most of these cards like Coalition Victory, Worldfire, etc. have as much impact as most of the player base have been clamoring for about a decade. And they're just not that impactful. And unbanning these cards makes the ban list stronger, because the list becomes more and more clear what a ban-worthy card looks like. For the longest time, ban list discussions became impossible when Coalition Victory is banned, but Thassa's Oracle isn't. It just doesn't make sense. And these recent unbans throughout the last year are actually quite impactful to the health of the format, because it builds better trust between the Commander format panel and their player base. And that's the most important thing, it's the trust between the two of us. Talking about trust, there's also a lot of ways for players to directly reach out to the format panel in ways that wasn't quite as direct as the former Rules Committee. So despite the fact that some people are calling this update a similar kind of no changes update that we might be accustomed to in the past under the RC or Rules Committee, Wizards has communicated a lot more in their decision making, and at least for me as someone who was part of the Commander Advisor Group before, there's much more transparency and much more ability to contribute and impact decision making. I'll add that as part of my process, we internally debated each of these cards for hours until we could come to some consensus or vote. So I can promise you the feedback that you provide that I get, or the ones that I read online, are the ones I share in the room and discuss with them. But I know you don't get to see these discussions happening, and all you get is just the results on the other end with some write-up on the main website. So when it comes to hotly debated cards, it's hard not to grasp the full picture when you're evaluating a card for your needs, when cards need to be evaluated across the entire spectrum of play, with much more focus on casual play, because it's the most unregulated. It's the hardest to regulate amongst, all casual players. Compared to CDH, the community is much more rallied around their main source of information. If there is decision making in how social play needs to be changed, what king making constitutes to, etc., there's much more systems in play because those players are highly engaged, while casual players, maybe you watch a Game Nights video or Shuffle Up and Play, and you're like, that's what I think Commander is. But it could also just be as wild as whatever your friend tells you, right? You might have been playing Lutri the entire time, right? It's the Wild West. And when it's a Wild West, we need a little bit more rules for that. All of this is why something like Rhystic Study commands so much of the discussion when it comes to bans. It's incredibly powerful. It creates a lot of problems in CDH, and also creates a lot of poor game experience in casual play as well. And if I can spout these problems this quickly, why isn't Rhystic Study instant banned? I'm sure when Rhystic Study was originally designed in the 90s because it came out in Prophecy, nobody could have expected how powerful it would be in a multiplayer format. I don't know, maybe they did test for multiplayer, I don't know about that. With 10 different printings, this is a highly coveted $60 staple that is extremely iconic in Commander. It's almost as iconic as Sol Ring itself. It's such a mainstay of the format, it even has a promo from the Commander's Arsenal released in 2012, and repeatedly dangled as a chase rare in sets like Wilds of Eldraine or Final Fantasy. People really love this card, but not without its faults, and there are definitely a lot of faults. So let's talk about why it should be banned. Let's start with the big one. Rhystic Study is incredibly problematic in CDH, especially in comp REL events where all the triggers eats up a lot of time by offering too many moments for players to interact or discuss, or providing too much material for the players of the table to interact with each other. When I mean material, too much interaction in hand, refueling each player, right? And it creates these stalemates that incentivizes draws naturally through exhausting a match clock or purposely by players choosing to draw under a stalemate. Very big problem. So, Rhystic Study also gives blue, one of the best and most necessary colors of CDH, an incredible advantage in having the strongest draw engine alongside Mystic Remora. We're not talking about Remora today, we're talking about Study. It creates imbalance by giving blue, which already has the best stack interaction, the ability to draw their way and sustain through a game, and gives commanders of blue even further advantage over sans blue commanders, or sans blue color pairings. And given that it's such a strong CDH staple, multiple Rhystic Studies creates very complicated stacks of triggered abilities on each spell that's being cast, adding more time to the match and complexity to tracking the game properly. Then looking over to Bracket 3 or just general casual play, Rhystic Study can create lots of bad gameplay experience of indirect kingmaking. So in CDH, we can joke about direct kingmaking. In casual play, it's indirect kingmaking, where some players will just be the type of person who will never pay even though they have the mana for it because they're just that person, right? They'll have a hat that says never pay and a t-shirt that's like, I don't play blue, I don't know, what funny t-shirt they'll have. These players on principle never want to play the tax, right? And there's just memes about it online, and in casual play, where not everyone's sweating out for maximum win equity, you just can't do anything about it, right? There are also players who will never take into consideration the impact of allowing an opponent to draw an extra 7 cards over the course of a few turns because they don't want to pay the tax for their own spells. And no matter how much you show them the light, Commander and Magic just might not be that type of game for this player. They just want to jam spells, no think, and have fun. And again, there's nothing you can do about that. And reasonably so, it feels really bad. There's no other card that allows casual mindsets like this, and there's nothing wrong with it, to create such an imbalance in a match, and it is genuinely a feel bad. So, even outside of CH reasons, Rhystic Study can be a problematic card across multiple contexts. But let's take a look at why it shouldn't be banned. Starting with CDH again, there are CDH players that enjoy weaving the needle with their win con and having deep stack exchanges and beating through a Rhystic Study or setting one up to protect their own win con. There's a lot of skill expression in how Rhystic Study interacts with a match and creates interesting decision making. And while it does create problems, there are a lot of players who enjoy it, and it kind of is part of the format identity, at least for CDH, right? You just expect to fight through a lot of counterspells or ram through your thing with a silence, right? It's just part of the CDH identity, at least to me. The same way a Brainstorm is to Legacy. Super broken, but that's where you play it, right? If we ban Rhystic Study, where do you play it? It's nowhere else. This is the spot for it. Rhystic Study is as iconic as Vidalcan Orrery. It's a very Commander card. And lots of players love playing a Rhystic Study. And also, Rhystic Study's worst case scenarios are only amplified as power increases. In lower power play where there's much more mana and much less game actions being taken and not, all these counterspells being slung, studies can often just sit there with no value or very low value as players just simply pay the tax with lots more lands untapped. At the end of the day, a lot of us are just taxpayers. Most importantly, and this is the big one, Rhystic Study is an expensive card that Wizards has promoted as a chase rare specifically for this format. Banning it will have the same effect of banning Mana Crypt, Jewel Lotus, or Dockside Extortionist. And while there are a lot of players who will happily say, I own this card and I'm okay with seeing it gone, You can't speak for your neighbor, because there will be lots of players who enjoy playing with the card and don't want to lose on a card they save money for or trade it into. It's worth quite a bit. I can buy Skyrim on sale for less than $60, you know? Like, $60 is a lot of money. I can tell you specifically why it's problematic in terms of time, gameplay experience, etc. And the only way we can really counter it is that it's iconic, it can be low impact in casual play, and it's expensive. Doesn't really hit quite as hard. So here's my take on the card overall. Look, this is one of the hardest discussions to have, because if I was patching for a free-to-play game where price was not a factor, I would be, you know, holding my picket sign way more to advocate for Rhystic Studies to get banned, right? This card sucks. It's boring, it contributes to poor gameplay experiences, and even if we argue giving decks more card draw is seen as good gameplay, there is ample replacements at this point that are way more interesting, that fits unique deck building much better, right? But being a boring card isn't a reason to ban something, especially when it costs $60. The fact that it isn't extremely problematic across every power level and soft banned from bracket 1 and 2 and sometimes 3 makes it a fine card in higher power play, because there's better expectation and social behavior to play around it. Some players even enjoy playing against it, because it creates a lot more opposition from opponents to interact. And this creates interesting political gameplay that a lot of higher power Commander players enjoy. I'll feed my Rhystic so I can answer that person. You should never do it because they're always lying, but hey, the illusion of politics is fun. This is the card that best illustrates why bans aren't purely about power. We have to consider how many players enjoy or dislike this card, rather than just catering to some louder voices online. I'm not trying to, like, you know, be mean to loud voices. You know, we need loud voices. I'm just saying, there's a lot of voices out there, all right? This isn't a sly. Calm down. And most importantly, anytime a card is banned, it's essentially burning money from players in their collections. We all know the response to the infamous bans of Mana Crypt, Dockside, Extortionist, and Jewel Lotus was too strong in many situations. But a lot of players also just can't really take losing a couple $100 out of the blue. Especially after years of Wizards specifically dangling this card and those cards. And I know it just feels like a betrayal. It kinda is. You can't reprint Dockside Extortioners as a mythic in an expensive booster product, then rug pull the community suddenly a few years later. You can't print Neon Mana Crypts that are worth thousands of dollars and suddenly tank its value. I know it's not Wizards that specifically made the decision to ban the card, and it's the fault of the past RC for not communicating the action enough to give warning, but this relationship is intertwined. I can't promise Rhystic Studies is going to stay legal forever, but for now it seems like it just doesn't have enough threshold of community sentiment to ban this card. But I'll say, even if it does get banned, the community will have ample time and notification of it, and it won't be a repeat of the past. And that's the important part. There's too much discussion to be had, and even if it goes, you will know. You will have time to react, and it won't be a repeat of the past. We're trying to specifically avoid that. So, that was a lot to talk about, so let's talk about something lighter, like Thassa's Oracle. Many players assumed this update was gonna be the update that Thassa's Oracle was finally gonna meet her end. As a mainstay of CDH in being the most compact win con with Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact, Thassa's Oracle has overtaken Laboratory Maniac as the poster child of broken Commander when she was released in Theros Beyond Death in 2020. Wait, do we miss Landman now? Do people want to see him back? Did we treat him too unfairly? Thassa's Oracle has had a target painted on her for the last 6 years, especially anytime a balance discussion is brought up. It just didn't make sense while Oracle is legal, but Coalition Victory isn't. And there's no amount of discussion that can sway players who are looking at a hard to interact win con that costs 2 blue and a Wooburg enchantment that has 10 more hoops to jump through. You just can't argue it. I can write a whole thesis on showing, gameplay experience, why they're similar, but just look at the cards, it just doesn't make sense. So now that we're cleaning house with the ban list and removing Coalition Victory, and now it's legal for a while now, is it time we finally ban Thassa's Oracle? Let's take a look at reasons why it should be banned. Thassa's Oracle is the signpost broken win con that is difficult to answer outside of a hard counterspell or specific silver bullet answer like a Torpor Orb, or shuffling graveyard back in a library, right? Very specific answers and very specific timing, right? There's no lead up, it just happens and you need to have it. Thassa's Oracle is also most problematic in games where players do not expect to play into the 2-card combo, which is usually lower power games. And Thassa's Oracle also gives CDH decks of blue and black too much advantage in having such a compact win con that demands answers from one specific color without diluting your deck with silver bullets, thus negating some diversity in the meta. It just makes Dimir too good. And that's mainly it. Thassa's Oracle does create a lot of feel-bads when the table isn't ready for it. But it's been 6 years, and most of the feel-bad situations for casual play is actually solved by the bracket system and better signposting of power in a pod. Which takes us to why Thassa's Oracle shouldn't be banned. The bracket system fixes most of the problem with Thassa's Oracle in game experiences it doesn't belong in. So while you can play Thassa's Oracle within bracket 3 as one of your 3 game changers, it's generally understood Thassa's Oracle belongs in bracket 4 and above. And even in that range of power, there's not a strong enough consensus from the CDH community that Thassa's Oracle is actually harmful to the meta. While blue and black is already dominating in the colors being represented, removing Thassa's Oracle would not give lower color decks that much more ability to find a space in the metagame, when the problem is really high color decks of partners or their WUBRG just having better access to better and better cards. That's the tough pill to swallow. Sorry, your Orzhov deck's gonna suck forever because it just doesn't have access to blue, doesn't have access to red. Removing Thassa's Oracle is not gonna save your deck. You might win one more game out of 6, you know? Sorry, that's just the tough truth. There is an argument that can be made that removing Thassa's Oracle can refine some interaction packages to be more targeted against decks and strategies with more representation. So, like, you can bring in Graveyard Hate for Breach decks or more creature removal for Labman when he comes back. The problem is still the high color deck has access to silences, better interaction, and a variety of outs that will dodge all your silver bullets. And personally, my argument is that you shouldn't even be watering down your deck with bad interaction when you should be focused on winning. Just win. It's CDH. Stop playing king-making cards. But that's just my opinion and isn't that relevant here. The part that's relevant is the silver bullet part. Regardless, there's just too much space and nuance to debate this that is not a Flash situation, where Flash actually stifled creativity or ability to play other decks that weren't Najeela or Tymna Thrasios. You just couldn't do anything. You could play Godo, you could play a couple other decks back in the day, but really Flash was the only thing you can do because it was just the best thing you could do. Thassa's Oracle, while is a very good thing to do, is not the same level. I'd argue Underworld breaches. So, where do I stand on this? I've played Commander for about 10 years now. I've only ever seen Thassa's Oracle played in a casual game once at my LGS. Thassa's Oracle is notorious for being broken, and while we know that the usages of Thassa's Oracle as a fair merfolk to divine your top deck is extremely rare, the bracket system has mostly resolved the biggest problem it could have for the format, which is having it show up in casual play. If anything, Thassa's Oracle is more of a symbol of competitive play falling into casual spaces, and casual players want it banned as a gesture to balance the format more and deny the ability of pub stomping with Thassa's Oracle. The real problem is a pub stomper is going to ruin the game no matter what, with or without Thassa's Oracle. And if Thassa's Oracle will be banned, it probably needs to be banned for CDH, where it has the most impact. And while it's not impossible we would ever ban something for just one bracket, the community needs to have such an overwhelming and clear message demonstrating how Thassa's Oracle is actually ruining gameplay experiences. There are CDH players who enjoy play against Thassa's Oracle. It's a clear and iconic win in the format that newer players can gravitate to and understand. There is counterplay around it. It's not so much Thassa's Oracle and Console, it's how you get there. If we don't like how the Thoracle decks are winning, let's ask the way to get there, not how it actually wins. I'll silence you, brain freeze all the table, find a way to win another way, right? There's so many different ways once you establish Underworld Breach. It just doesn't matter. I don't believe this card will ever get banned. If that wasn't hot enough for you, let's actually get into my hot take section. I want to unban Griselbrand. Are you out of your mind? It's Griselbrand in a 40 life format? Yes, I am out of my mind. Griselbrand. Let's talk about it. Originally released and Avacyn restored in 2012, Griselbrand is one of the most iconic reanimator targets in all of Magic. Griselbrand refills your hand at the exchange of 7 life, and this exchange of drawing 7 for 7 is alone to end games with the resource imbalance, outside of the fact that you have a must-answer threat that will regain the life you paid with lifelink. So let's break down the implications of how Griselbrand is problematic. He draws you an incredible amount of cards in exchange for life, which is further exacerbated by the higher life total in the format. I get that, don't worry, I see it. And once you have Griselbrand, with enough mana and interaction, you can spend those cards and further outvalue your opponents or just win on the spot. Wait, what does this sound like? Oh, it's Adnos. Wait, no, it's not Adnos. It's Necropotence. So while Necropotence does require you to sculpt your hand size down to 7 at the end step, and doesn't let you draw cards on your opponent's turn to start your turn with a massive group of cards the same way Griselbrand can, the play patterns are very, very similar. You do need to construct your deck in a way it's conducive to being able to spend the quantity of cards you're drawing, meaning you need a lot of strong ramp like Moxen or other game changer artifacts or lands, but also the cards you're drawing probably needs to be cheap and powerful. You're just building a Storm deck that already exists. Except the caveat is that Griselbrand is even worse in an Adnos pile the same way Peer to the Abyss raises your deck's overall average mana value. They're different decks, and it's exciting and interesting to me to introduce a pivot for Reanimator decks in CDH to allow you to have access to another way to win the game. You know, let's talk about metagame diversity, right? Like, alright, here we go, Reanimator decks now have Griselbrand. Gotta be something, right? Griselbrand is also definitely a game changer, and requires a lot of game changers to truly enable it as a Reanimator target. I mean, it's always going to be good to draw 7 in a life game deck that you play as a closer, but its worst case scenario are mostly restricted to highest power play, where I think it would make for interesting gameplay with high amounts of interaction. I know Griselbrand looks scary, sounds scary, and is scary, but Griselbrand is also so iconic to Magic as a Reanimator target that it would be nice to have a bridge between players who enjoy playing Griselbrand in Modern or Legacy, or Cube, and bring that over to higher bracket level play of Commander. It's kind of cool. But as passionately as I try to defend this really shocking opinion, I don't think it's going to realistically happen soon without a really big swing in how players feel about Griselbrand. But I do think it's possible. It's not 0. It's not high. I think it's higher than Rhystic Study getting banned. Yeah. And ironically, talking about Reanimator targets, I don't want to unban Iona. I know it only locks one color and other opponents can answer Iona for the locked player, but it's just not really interesting to cheat in a threat that specifically stops all casting of a monocolor deck when monocolor decks already have so much disadvantage in this format. So while Iona can be answered, the question is, does Iona bring anything fun to the format? I just don't think so. Griselbrand's broken, but I think it's fun. I think it's super cool. Rhystic Study, super broken, super iconic, super, milquetoast, draw engine, but it doesn't stop someone from playing. Iona specifically is a feel bad that locks one person out, and if you really want to play to locking someone out of like a subset of their cards, play Archon of Valor's Reach or whatever it's called. Lock out all the instants. Play the Eldrazi that's like, can't even or whatever. Like, counters a lot of stuff, right? There's lots of ways to lock people out. Flashing in, like cheating in Iona. All right, what does that actually do? Why don't you play a thing that wins the game? I don't know. It just feel bad. If we complain about Grand Arbiter and Winter Orb, I think Iona is way worse than all of those. Because you just can't play it. You also have to think about the implications of now monocolor decks have to play colorless interaction to remove a rare Iona. It just sucks, right? Talk about Kalia being instant kill. Kalia killing one player Master Cruelties. Kind of funny, kind of rude. Kalia bringing Iona and locking out half the table. That is a feel bad. I would just scoop and run another match and not play against Iona. I don't know. Iona sucks. You know what doesn't suck? The last card I want to talk about is Prime Time. We gotta talk about this one. It's a beloved card by many who play Amulet Titan in Modern and old heads of Commander who tasted the power of Prime Time. I have. It tastes good. And if we look back on other cards on this list, it hits a lot of things for me to have it unbanned. It's an iconic card, especially from Modern, and from older Commander players who enjoyed it. And while Prime Time is problematic in the way that I could just find a Gaia's Cradle, you could theoretically play it fairly that instead of grabbing the Cradle, you grab like a Forest, you know? Or something silly. It's the same argument that's made for Panoptic Mirror, where the argument is you could play it without imprinting extra turns, and even if you did, it should be done in higher bracket play where there's more reasonable counterplay to it. Same thing for Prime Time. So, let's talk about why it should be banned. Prime Time would instantly be a green staple the way Rhystic Study is a blue staple. And is that specifically healthy to let green have access to such a strong tool across the board? Probably not at 6 mana. And ramping by 2 on ETB and attacks would really quickly put one player ahead of the others, the same way a Mana Crypt puts one player ahead of others really, really fast. It also creates an effect where cloning a Primetime or blinking your own Primetime would be the thing to do, similar to how Dockside behave. Remember that? That kind of sucked too. And the most important thing is once it's unbanned, it's going to be very difficult to reban if it turns out to be problematic, which is the biggest point against Primetime and a lot of other cards on this list. Even though the Game Changer system works by allowing us to restrict play of these cards to certain game experiences where they are suitable, Commander is better when it's stable, and every card that is unbanned needs to be rock solid because rebanning would damage so much of the integrity and trust from the players in the format. And that's what all this is about. So let me pick up that $60 question from the beginning. If I asked you for $60, you'd want a really good reason. And that's what a ban is. When we ban a card like Rhystic Study or Thassa's Oracle or something as seismic as Mana Crypt, we are effectively reaching into thousands of collections and saying, I'ma take this. We're taking something you invested in, something you enjoy, and something Wizards have actively promoted. And we're removing it from your experience. That is not a small ask. And that's why bans can't just be about power, and it can't just be about loud discourse. You should share all your opinions though, because we do need it. They have to be about trust. The trust that when something is banned, it is clearly and overwhelmingly necessary. The trust that when something is unbanned, it strengthens the ban list rather than destabilizes it. And we need to build trust that the format isn't being jerked around by reactionary swings. Commander is not perfectly balanced, as all things should be. It's a social format with a competitive ceiling. It's a place where Biorhythm can be hilarious one night and horrifying the next, where Whistlebrand is a terrifying thought experiment, where Primetime still lives rent-free in people's heads. Every decision has ripple effects across casual tables, high power pods, CDH tournaments, local game stores, and kitchen tables. So when you look at an update and think, why didn't they just ban it? I promise you it's not because we ignored you. Or we don't know. We know. We brought what you said into the debate and argued over it for hours. Sometimes the right answer is taking action, and sometimes just patience. The bracket system does a lot of work for us in soft banning cards and giving powerful cards an appropriate space to play without impacting casual play. It stops us swinging the hammer liberally. The strongest ban list is the one that bans the least. That's my perspective. So my last question to you is how do you want to spend $60? Thanks for watching. Yo, what's up everyone? You know it's me. You know I gotta show up if we talk about $60, you know? But you know what? If you got $6, just $6, right? Not taking the zero off. Gone. If you got $6, you could donate to the Patreons. Have you considered that? If you like the video, if you want to see more videos, please contribute to the Patreons, you know? I know we haven't been posting that many videos. You know, it's good to see you again. But we're trying this new thing called quality over quantity. And that's just some wisdom from my boy Quam. There you go. All right. I've yapped enough. Sorry for taking your time. Thanks for sticking around to the end. It's good to see y'all. Gonna be trying to make we're gonna try and get more, you know, videos out for you. It's gonna be good. But you know, let's just have a good time. All right. Here's some videos. Check them out. Bye.